L'chaim, l'chaim, to get into the right mood. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, thank you all for waiting these long 7 minutes to get online, to not give up. And people from America had a clock change. Someone was very worried that the people from America were going to get all confused because of the clock change, but I had a lot of confidence that they'd be here with us. Okay, I have two things to share today, two short classes. The first one is a class I heard this week from Rabbi Effie Ehrenberg, who's a very close student of our Rabbi Ginsburg, Rabbi Yitzhak Feivish ben Brian and Malka, who should have a refuah shalema. Reb Effie is one of his close students, and he gave a class this week on Purim, and that's the first thing I'd like to share with all of you. It's about really how to be a true best friend. Because as we'll see, Haman also had friends, but they turned out not to be such good friends, as we shall see. Okay, so 3 times in the Megillah, Haman's friends are referred to as, it says, Zerish v'chol ohavav. The word ohavav is Aleph, Hey, Beis, Yud, Vav. So it has the word like ahav, love. It's more, it was like his loved ones, his wife and his loved ones. He would take counsel with his wife and his loved ones. And the 4th time after the fall begins, Haman was going up, up, up. And that's when he had all these loved ones. And then things seem to take a turn for the worse. This starts to be on his fall down. And then they're referred to as Chachamav, his sages, his wise people. They no longer were his beloved friends. They were more like critical advice givers. Okay, so that's just where we're going to be going. And let's see. So Haman has people who give him counsel. What he doesn't know what to do, he goes to his wife and his loved ones. Okay, so, and the 4th time is after Haman takes Mordechai on the horse through Shushan, because that's the beginning of his fall. So Haman comes into Achashverosh with great confidence. And this is really one of the major turning points in the Megillah, where there's Ruach HaKodesh. Now, here's an interesting idea. I have an interesting idea I haven't heard before. So we know that Megillah Esther is sanctified. It seals Tanakh. It's the last of the 24 books of Tanakh. And the Talmud in Talmud Megillah discusses why is it considered a holy book. And they look for, the sages look for Ruach HaKodesh. So they're looking for Ruach HaKodesh. And there's a line there that says, by Omer Haman Belibo, Haman thought in his heart, it must be me. This is when he hears the king say, what shall we do to the man who the king wants to honor? And Haman is at the peak of narcissism, and he thought in his heart, it must be me. It must be me. Who else could the king want to honor? So he's at the peak of his pride, it must be me. And then things start to turn around. So in English, you say the pride before the fall. In Hebrew, it's lifnei shever gaon. Lifnei shever is before a breaking. Gaon, there's pride. Pride before a fall, a similar idea. And the fall is very, very quick after his ego reaches the highest possible place. Okay, so the Gemara Megillah asks, how do we know what Haman thought? And the Gemara answers, the author of Megillah Esther knew people's thoughts. Ruach HaKodesh, know people's thoughts, it's Ruach HaKodesh. So he knew that Haman thought in his heart. It's very rare, I think in Chumash itself, there's only one case of Ruvain, where it says Reuben wanted to save him, where it says what's in someone's heart. It says, the Chumash has what Reuben thought, even though he said, let's throw Yosef in the pit. The Chumash tells us that he only said that so that he could save him later. But it's very rare for Chumash to say what's in someone's thoughts. So this is one of the times that it does Ruach HaKodesh. Haman thought, who could the king want to honor more than me? Okay. So, and again, it's the turning point of the story. Something flips at that point. Okay. So Haman takes counsel 3 times during his high period, and the 4th time after his fall. Okay, happy Purim. Someone just sent a message. Yes. Okay. So Haman comes home depressed and anguished after taking Mordecai through the town on a horse. And we know that his daughter, thinking that it was Haman leading the horse, and no, he thought it was Mordecai. The daughter thought it was Haman on the horse, like Haman had wanted. And Mordecai was the guy walking next to the horse, and she emptied a chamber pot on what she thought was Mordecai's head, but it turned out to be Haman's head. And so Haman comes home all gooey, depressed, and anguished. Okay, so let's just review here. It says Zeresh v'chol ohavav, Zeresh and all the, Zeresh is his wife's lovely name, of course, and all who loved him. And the 4th time it says Zeresh v'hachamav. Okay. Oh, someone is asking me if I got in here. She was working hard to help me. I'm just going to write back. Yes. Shelley. Yes. Okay. Yeah, she was quite worried about my not being able to get in. Okay. So the Ohavav, his beloved friends, become Hachamav, his wise ones. So when things are going well for Haman, his wife and friends love him. But the 4th time, when something goes wrong, they turn into advisors, not good friends. People who are full of advice, and God forbid we fall, are not such good friends. So Klipa is the mirror image of Kedusha. We're going to see how it is in this thing. Good friends, true friends, when we fall, they love us. They give us a lot of love when we're in those down times. They love us. And when we're on a high, that's when they'll give us advice. That's a good friend. That's when they'll give us helpful information. But when we're down, they don't start advising us, because advice has a certain negativity to it, like you're doing things wrong, do things my way. So when things are going well, Zeresh loved him, his so-called friends loved him. So good friends, when you fall, they love you. They might be advisors when we're doing well, but they end as lovers if we fall. Bad friends are the opposite. They love someone when they're doing well, and they just leave them when they give them advice when they fall, even worse than ignoring them. Okay, so Chazal say, don't menachem someone while their corpse lies before him. I'm sure we've all heard this idea. Don't comfort someone while their corpse lies before them. It's not appropriate. Also, during the first 3 days of Shiva, you're not supposed to say, time to get back to life. Come on, cheer up. No, you don't. It's the halacha is you're not allowed to say that. You don't say time to get back to life during the first 3 days of Shiva, and you don't comfort someone before the corpse is buried. You have to wait till the corpse is buried. We have to wait till the corpse is buried before we comfort someone, which is a sensitive idea. Okay, so profound friendship, real deep friends, only give advice when we're doing really well. Okay, it's more complicated, as we'll see, to be able to give over the words that someone can hear. But the footprint of Kedusha, this is a really good line. The footprint of Kedusha doesn't preach when we fall. Kedusha loves us. Kedusha doesn't preach when someone falls, doesn't say, I told you so. Why didn't you listen to me? No, Kedusha doesn't say that. Kedusha is there as a supportive and loving friend when we fall. Okay. And but a good friend gives insight while we're up. To give insight, to give advice could be to give insight. And Reb Effie just mentioned that a spouse can be a very good friend, Alavai. And he quotes this line from Bereshis, Lov Tov Lios Adam Levad. It's not good for a man to be alone. Hashem says, Eseh lo ezer kenegdo. I will make him an ezer kenegdo. Okay, so we know ezer means help. Now this word kenegdo, it has 2 meanings. It can mean opposite him, supporting him. Like if someone is getting a little floppy, the person is starting to flop, His connecto is to support them. So that's that's opposite him supporting him, one meaning. And it also could mean opposing him, fighting with him. Okay, so connecto itself can be something good or something bad. It says if he's zocher, if he merits, she helps him, she stabilizes him. That's the connecto. And if he's lo zocher, she fights with him. So connecto is against him, but it can be to help him through friction. You know, you little shine things up, shine your silver with a little friction, shine your family. It has to, of course, be done at the right time when a person is up and they can receive it. She refines him. We can refine someone by giving them supporting words, by stabilizing them. Okay, so the questions we're trying to answer is, when do you scrutinize a person? When do you stabilize and support and scrutinize a person? And when do you love them? So a good friend does that, gives us the advice when we're, the insight when we're up, and just loves us when we're down. Okay, so, and the taller something is, the more it has, the more it needs stabilization, the more it needs support. You have to pivot against it to hold it up. So what we're saying, the important points here we're making is that we give advice to a person when they're in an up psychological stage, because then it might be safe to puncture their ego. It's a deeper friendship. When a person falls, you just love them, because someone is not capable of hearing and internalizing criticism when they're in a fallen state of consciousness. When they're in a down state of consciousness, they can't absorb, they can't internalize the criticism. It's just a waste to criticize someone when they're at a low point. To someone to internalize criticism, they have to be at a high point. So you get that? It's very tricky. Us good, loyal friends, we have to know when to give feedback. Okay, so give advice to a person when they're up. Okay, so first lift a person up, and then he has the ability to learn Torah. That's also an idea. You don't start teaching someone right away. First you lift them up, you make them feel positive, help them feel positive, etc. Because someone needs to be in a stable state to internalize advice. We have to help stabilize a person before they can absorb our advice. So the evil friends of Haman praise Haman even more when he's high. And when he's down, when he crashes, they just give him some cold advice. Okay, so you can oppose a person when they're high, but if they fall, love them. We see we're repeating this idea. I guess it has to be repeated a few times because it might be new material. L'chaim, l'chaim. Hashem should bless us to love our friends when they need our love. L'chaim. Okay. So, so give someone insight into being more sensitive. Let's say we have to give somebody some insight into being more sensitive. Do it when they're in a high. Like, this is the idea. Don't preach to a fallen person. Don't preach to a fallen person. You have to catch their moment of recuperation when a person can internalize advice. And he said a good spouse can do it. Okay. So Haman is soaring. He's surrounded by people who love him. So Haman went higher and higher, and then he crashed. Now, this is the opposite of what Mordechai's approach to Esther. Mordechai doesn't bolster Esther up. He says, Be'ez Hazos, at this time, and I never knew this, there's 13 times when the Megillas Esther is being read where there's a special niggin. And this is one of the places when Mordechai comes to Esther. He says, Im tacharishi, if you are silent, here, Im tacharishi, if you are silent, you'll lose out, Mordechai says to her. Don't think Am Yisrael needs you. We'll work it out without you. This is how Mordechai did it. But he says, Mi yodea. Who knows if this is the reason you reached Malchus? Don't think you'll be able to escape in the palace, he says to her. So this is how the loved friend gives advice. When the person is up, they tell them how it is. Don't think we need you. Someone just waved at me. Okay, I'll wave back. I'm willing to wave back. All right, so, okay. So he says, by the way, a wife can bring a husband back down to earth. He just kind of threw that in. I guess a spouse can do that. Bring you back to earth. Okay, now he's speaking about, we know in the 23rd kapitel, a very popular chapter of Psalms, it has the word shiftecha u'mashantecha. Didn't you always wonder about that? His rod and his staff, they comfort me. Didn't you always wonder, how can we be comforted by a rod and a staff? So shiftecha, shevet, is a stick to beat someone with. That's criticism. That's criticism. Mishantecha, mishan is to lean on. It's something to lean on. So shiftecha, mishantecha, one is actual criticism when the person is able to internalize it because they're in an up state of consciousness. And mishantecha, it's good to have a friend to lean on when we might not be in such a great mood. So you can count, he says, Rebbe says, you can count on your spouse to lean on, and you can count on your, so this is spouse, good friend, / good friend. You can count on your good friend to lean on, and you can count on your good friend, he says, to flog you when needed, which means to give feedback. You know, in the 32nd chapter of Tanya, which is Lamed Beis, which is known as the heart of Tanya, the lave of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe also says that we have to give feedback to our best friends. Who's going to give us feedback? Who's going to give us honest feedback in a kind and loving way if it's not our best friends? That's one of the requirements. If we want to be someone's best friend, we have to be brave enough to give them feedback. Okay. And it calms me down to know that I can count on my friend to give me that honest feedback, and I can count on them to lean on. It calms me down. Okay. And again, this idea and advice, there's negation. When we're giving someone advice, we're saying, you should be doing this differently. And Musar is preaching when the person is down. Oh, here's this, I really love this. Musar is preaching when the person is down, and Chassidus is giving insight when the person is up. I think that's the best definition I've seen of the difference between Musar and Chassidus. Again, Musar is preaching when the person is down. That's horrible. You ever have that happen to you? Being down and someone starts preaching, it's like, doesn't help at all. So yes, so Chassidus is a very different approach. It's like, let me share the deep secrets of life with you. Okay, so, and he says something, Effie says something that's very typical Torah HaNefesh. The advice we always give to a friend is, you have too much gaiva. It seems like that's always the problem. That's a Torah HaNefesh idea. It's true for everyone. Everyone's problem is too much gaiva. And you can only say that to a person when they're up. You can't say that to a depressed person, you have too much gaiva, only to a person when they're up. Okay, now here's an exciting fact in history. Zeresh escaped with 70 of Haman's children to Bnei Brak. And the sages say that the children of Haman, the descendants of Haman, are learning Torah in Bnei Brak. They megayered and they learned Torah. There was this spark. It's interesting. I just read something tonight by Aaron Moss from Sydney, Australia. He sends out a weekly something interesting. And he said something very interesting about Haman. He said that after Haman went to Esther's first drinking party, he ate her meal, that it said he felt good in his heart. So the questions that ask, how can an evil Russia, how can you say about an evil Russia like Haman that he felt good in his heart? And the answer, we are told, is that from eating this kosher meal, by a Jewish woman, something that the good in his heart became the sparks of his descendants that megayered and are learning eating that kosher meal. Even Haman wound up having descendants whom regard. So you can always, the idea of this letter is just somebody coming to your Shabbos meal, it can have an effect. Inviting someone having kosher food at your house can change their life. Okay, also, just as a little side thought, there's an idea that, it says in the Haggadah that the beginning of the Haggadah is the story of the 5 sages. They were learning all night in Bnei Brak, and for bringing all night in Bnei Brak, and in the morning, some students came and said, time to stop for bringing and daven shacharis. So it was asked, how could, what's going on here? Can you imagine if the Rebbe's for bringing all night and it's almost dawn? Can you imagine Hasidic interrupting the Rebbe saying, stop the for bringing, it's time to say Kriya Shema? No, it wouldn't happen. How could it happen that these students are interrupting their teachers? Of course, it's in Bnei Brak. I hope no one here is listening from Bnei Brak. I think that was a vicious anti-Bnei Brak comment, but all right. But these children of Haman are learning there. But I'm sure there's a lot of they're probably lovely people by now also. Okay, so a high always has some gaiva mixed in. Bad advice is just criticism. And this is what Haman's friends did at the end. They said, forget it, you're finished. Not very supportive friends there. No good advice. Forget it, you're finished. All right, so this was a class. I just gave over my first half. Now I have one more short class to give. So this class was from Effie Ehrenberg. I found it quite helpful. And now here's a class from Y.Y. Jacobson that I actually heard 19 years ago, just before we moved from Crown Heights to Bad Ai, and I heard this live in 770. Okay, just to give some background. Okay, here's the story. Reb Tzvi. Reb Tzvi was the son of the Baal Shem Tov. So the Baal Shem Tov, as we all know, passed away on Shavuos. As when he passed away, the first year after he passed away, Reb Tzvi, his son, assumed the Nesius. He became Rebbe. On the first Yurtzeit, his father, the Baal Shem Tov, came to Reb Tzvi in a dream and said to him, the heavenly powers are now given over to the Maggid. And Reb Tzvi was a very humble person, and he took a garment that he had received from his father, and he came to the Maggid of Mezerich and gave him this garment, and that's when the Maggid became the Rebbe of that generation. Okay, so then Purim came around. This was the first Purim after the Maggid assumed the Nesius. It's Purim, and the Alter Rebbe, who was a student of the Maggid, wanted to be with the Maggid for Purim, but the Maggid told him to go to Reb Tzvi for the Suda, for the kavod, for the honor of Reb Tzvi. Okay, and the Alter Rebbe was a little disappointed because he wanted to be with his Rebbe for Purim, but he listened to the Maggid and he went to Reb Tzvi, and he said to Reb Tzvi, the Alter Rebbe said to the Reb Tzvi 3 times, please say a vort. And Reb Tzvi didn't say anything. And then the Alter Rebbe said, please say a vort from your father. And so now Reb Tzvi perked up and he said, my father, the Baal Shem Tov, once said that this vort is the essence of Purim. Isn't that exciting? This vort is the essence of Purim from the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, get ready. Okay. So the Zohar Parshas Mishpatim tells a story about Shlomo HaMelech. It says, every morning, the Zohar says, every morning when dawn broke, an eagle waited for Shlomo on the roof of his palace. Shlomo would climb up on the eagle, and the eagle flew away. And it was a very big eagle that blocked the light of the sun when it flew past. And the wise people will say, it's dark, Shlomo HaMelech is coming by on his eagle. And the foolish people would say, clouds are darkening our world. And the Baal Shem Tov said, this story is the essence of Purim. So we're going to get back to that. So it's a little, I'm not sure, we're not 100% clear what's going on, but this is the story. We're going to find out how the story is the essence of Purim. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe was very excited by this vort. He got it right away. He thanked the Maggid that he was zochev, that he merited to hear this vort from Reb Tzvi. Okay, so the Baal Shem Tov's perspective on the essence of Purim. Okay, so a preface to understanding this. Let's go back to Purim 1965. Everyone can go back to where they were. I was, I think I was 17 and a freshman at college. Okay, so the Rebbe was in Avelis after his mother, Rebbe Tzimchana, passed away. And this was one of the things the Rebbe said. The Rebbe speaks about, in Gemara Megillah on page 19a, there's a four-way argument on where you have to hear the Megillah to be Yotzi on hearing the Megillah. Now I have all the sources here. I think I mentioned this last week, but I didn't have all the info. So here it is. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says you can start hearing the Megillah from chapter 6, B'layla Hahu, when the king couldn't sleep, because that's the beginning of the miracle. Rabbi Yossi says there in the Gemara that we begin by beginning of chapter 3, the rise of Haman, Achar Hadvarim Ha'ela, Haman is elevated. Rabbi Yehuda says we could begin by the middle of chapter 2 when Mordechai is introduced. Ish Yehudi, Hayasor B'Shushan Havira, with Shemo Mordechai. But Rabbi Meir says we have to hear from the very first word in the first line, Vayhi v'yamei Achashverosh. And the halacha is like Rabbi Meir. And it's very rare that the halacha follows Rabbi Meir. It usually follows some other authority. But here, for Megillas Esther, the halacha is like Rabbi Meir. As we know, we have to hear from the beginning of chapter 1. Okay, so now we'd like to ask. Okay, so we have to begin by the beginning of chapter 1. But why do we have to know the menu of the party and the carpets and the tapestry? Why do we have to know all this? Why do we have to know about Vashti? Why do we have to know all these things? And why do we read this on Purim? We read that Achashverosh was king for 3 years. Vashti was killed at the end of a 7-day feast in Shushan. 4 years later, Esther becomes queen. Haman becomes a minister. Years later, Haman makes genocide on the Jews. Why is all of it relevant? So the Medrash tells us that when Mashiach comes, everyone will be a Navi. We won't have to read the Nevi'im because we'll all be prophets. But Chumash won't change. We'll still learn Chumash and we'll still learn Megillas Esther. And Megillas Esther is the only one of the 24 books that doesn't mention Hashem's name. Why are we learning Megillas Esther after Mashiach comes? Okay. So the Rebbe said at this Farbrengen Purim 1965, we begin with Vayhi v'yamei Achashverosh to teach us about life and history, and it will continue to teach us after Mashiach comes. Now that's a very exciting thought. Okay, so the Rebbe didn't just answer questions. The Rebbe answered people, which is a very good thing to do, to know what a person's real question is when they're asking a question. So Purim 1965, the Rebbe said, how could an intelligent person feel that we're fulfilling the purpose of creation, that our Torah and mitzvahs are fulfilling the purpose of creation? We go against the world. We go in the opposite direction sometimes. And the Rebbe gave us instructions on Kegen der Welt. Sometimes we're against the whole world. So the Jewish version of history is that history is going somewhere. And this really made an impression. I remember 19 years ago sitting in the class learning this. Jewish version of history is going somewhere. It's going towards the Geula. If we've studied secular history, which we probably did at some point, it's just this happens, that happens. There's no sense, obviously, of going towards the Geula Shalema. But Jewish history is going somewhere. Mashiach is coming, and we're bringing the world closer to heaven, kissing earth, with the mitzvahs we do in the Torah we learn, like right now, it's happening. So Rabbi Meir says, read the Megillah from chapter 1. Look at the world in a new way. Look at the world through the glasses of Torah, not through the New York Times or the Shushan times. Could you imagine the Shushan times was writing this up? They'd write up Achashverosh became king. Then they'd write up 3 years. Every day they're putting on an issue, but 3 years later, they write this 180-day party. They might give some menus. Persians like smorgasbords. Years go by, the Shushan times every day, stuff happens, they're searching for a queen. It all looks like isolated events, okay? So the Megillah begins with the party and menu of Achashverosh. All of the details are all because the Jewish people will need to be saved. V'nahafachu. All history is made by Hashem, so Esther will be at the right place at the right time for the salvation of the Jewish history, for the Jewish people, for our own salvation. I mean, the hashgacha pratis, especially for someone who's comes a Baal Tshuva, and you think about all of the history Hashem had to do that we should be in a certain place in a certain time. It's like a miracle that all history, that not everyone, we know people that haven't become purim yet. And Hashem was so kind and arranged all of history that we should connect with Yiddishkeit. Okay, so it's all for our salvation. All of history is for the salvation of the Jewish people. So look at the story in the Megillah. So it can look like isolated events. For Purim, we have to go through decades of secular bureaucracy. There are decades that seem disconnected to reach the point where we'll connect with the truth. To connect all those disconnected points, even after Mashiach, we'll need to learn that all the points are really connected. All those points in our life, sometimes, we can connect the dots, and sometimes we're waiting. These dots, how do these dots fit into my life? Okay, so we're waiting. Godliness will be revealed, but there's still billions of details that seem disconnected, but they all lead to one essence. The Rebbe said a modern day example is the atom, like the power in a little tiny atom. It has a tiny identity, but it can change the world. He said our mitzvahs are like atoms. They seem small, one mitzvah, but it can change the world, it can change everything. So the Megillah is telling us, Megillah Esther is telling us, sometimes you don't know how to connect the dots, but no event or detail, there is no event or detail that is not part of the drama of leading the world to Mashiach. Wow, that is amazing. I think we'll have to make another l'chaim on that. There's no event or detail that's not part of the drama of leading the world to Mashiach. We should see it, l'chaim, l'chaim. Okay, so we have to know how to read the news. Example, 1840 with the Opium Wars between British and China, and they agreed over Shanghai that it should be an international city that you don't need a visa for. And 100 years later, in 1940, 50,000 Jews were saved because they didn't need a visa to get into Shanghai. When they had no place to go, they were able to go to Shanghai. 50,000 Jews were saved there. And they're only alive because of Shanghai. And when this class was being given in 770 by Rabbi Jacobson, there were people in the class, Kotlarskis, Reichiks, Bukits, people there were women in the class that were only alive because in 1840, they're only born because their ancestors survived in Shanghai. Because in 1840, Britain and China had the Boxer Rebellion and decided that Shanghai should be an international city in their peace treaty. It's like mind-blowing. Okay, so now to finish up. What did the Baal Shem Tov mean? Okay, the story with Shlomo HaMelech. Sometimes there's darkness in the world. Sometimes there's darkness in the world. And is it a cloud? Is it an eagle? Is it an eagle with Shlomo blocking the sun? Is it a cloud? Shlomo. So we feel confusion. Is it just natural clouds? Or is it Shlomo flying to a new place when the sun reappears? Okay, so Purim. There's major anti-Semitism in the world. When Mordechai sends Esther to Achashverosh, Esther says fast and do tshuva. The Rebbe doesn't understand, as we've said before, if they believed in diplomacy, Achashverosh liked beautiful women. Why is Esther fasting? She should be going to the beauty parlor, or today we would say the spa. Esther believed in Hashem, so why is she going to that monster at all? Did she believe in diplomacy or not? So the Jewish perspective on history, if there's darkness, it's Shlomo blocking the sun. First, go to Hashem. In the journey through redemption, if I must go to Achashverosh, after all it says, Vayhi v'yimei Achashverosh, Hashem will help me. So this is a lesson for all of us. Whenever there's something difficult, let's go to Hashem first. Please put that in your notes if you're taking notes. And then just to finish off. So the miracle of Purim it looks like it came through the forces of nature. Hashem's name is not mentioned, but it wasn't initiated through nature. Hashem's name is not in the Megillah. Hashem is not exposed in the Megillah. In that sense, the Megillah is like the newspaper. Hashem's name is not in the newspaper. This is Purim. There's no ray of godliness. But the Jewish perspective is that it's a process. History is a process run by Hashem for the Jewish people to fulfill our purpose of creation. And for this, the whole world is indispensable. Every detail in our life is indispensable for the geula, of the salvation of the Jewish people. It's a mind-blowing idea. And we know the idea of Purim. We have a Purim spiel. So Purim spiel is to let us know that we are characters in Hashem's play, and we can decide if we want to be the hero or the villain. We can be kind. We can be kind and sweet and invite people, or we could decide to be the villain and be mean and hurt someone's feelings, God forbid. So we think of ourselves as characters in Hashem's play, and we want to have a good part, of a nice, kindly part in Hashem's play. Let's do it. Let's be kind to that next person. Okay, just to give a little update, I'm actually next Motzi Shabbos, I was given tickets to go to a wedding in California. So it looks like, and it's the following, so it's like I'm going to miss the next 2 Sundays. That's what it looks like. But I guess you'll get the notices. And then the 3rd Sunday, I think we'll have a class before Purim. It'll be a couple of weeks before Pesach. We'll have 1 class before Pesach. So I'm going to miss you all, my beloved friends here, but it doesn't look like while I'm flying and things, I'll be able to give a class. But let's take a picture for the Rav. A few more people could put on their cameras. Our get well photo for Rav Yitzhak, then Brina Malka, Yitzhak 5-ish, then Brina Malka should have a refuah shalema, should have nachas from all the Torah we're learning, for him to have a refuah shalema, because we need him to teach us new stuff. So l'chaim, l'chaim, afrei lachem Purim, we should really treasure each moment and enjoy it. Shouldn't have to work too hard. Lots of love. Mwah. I will take the picture. 1, 2, 3. There, see, I'm getting so good at it. So really, afrei lachem Purim, thank you all so much for coming. It's wonderful to see you all. Hugs and kisses, lots of love. Shalom, shalom.